It is the review show. Adrian Horton with you, Caden McDonald joining me, just the two of us on the official, unofficial podcast of the Melbourne Demons, the DeeBrief, as we dissect the match sim against North Melbourne from yesterday. Dossy, welcome, my friend.
Naughtsie, thanks for having me, mate. It was a good little hit out for the boys. Saw some positives, a couple of negatives. I was ripping my hair out at stages. Had to remind myself that the match didn't mean a whole lot, but it's good to have the boys back out running around on the paddock.
I agree, and it's nice to have you on the show, mate, because you're a big dog these days. You've been doing your work with Channel 7, and I think that's going out to the world imminently. So big gigs and still got enough time for the debrief. So thank you.
Yeah, I've been practicing my craft in at 7 just to get it right for the debrief. So hopefully I've tuned myself up perfectly. Big pre-season and, ready to rip in and chat about the great men.
Now, mate, I'm going to touch on that point around negatives and we'll get it out of the system. But news has just come through at the time of recording that Andy Moners-Wakefield has unfortunately done an ACL, and we all feared it as soon as we saw him go down, and the trainers looked pretty distressed as well. That is just absolutely gut-wrenching for the young man who showed a lot of promise back end of last year when he came in. And I thought he was one of the big takeaways from the match sim yesterday. We know that Judd McVie will miss probably the first 3 or 4 rounds of season 2025. So he just felt like the perfect replacement for him. And now he's got a long road to recovery ahead of him. So, mate, my thoughts just go out to him as an individual, as a person, and someone that Ben Brown was speaking about on the commentary as a fierce competitor and a player that he believes has a big future. So, I mean, the one thing you always think about is hopefully this doesn't derail what Andy Moners-Wakefield can become in the future for this footy club, but just kills you on the eve of the season. I'm really upset for him.
Yeah, super frustrating for Andy. He was pretty good last year for us. It's another talent that comes through who's played 40 or 50 VFL games and can sort of step up to the first side. So, I was pumped to see him this season. When Judd went down, in my head, I was like, oh, well, that's Andy Moners-Wakefield's position now. So, really frustrating. I just hate those tackles when the foot gets planted and the knee gets stuck, especially this time of year. I don't know whether it's something I'm inventing in my head, but I feel like you see a lot of these sort of injuries over the summer when the grass is really grippy and they're playing in footy boots. Like the grass is sort of in cricket conditions. The grass is cut quite short. The ground's harder, and I feel like the footy boots get stuck in them a little bit. So when he got rotated over and the knee and the ankle were planted into the ground, it looked shocking. So I feel for the man. I don't know if you were going to touch on this or whether I'm just going off script, but
Power on, mate.
It was sort of frustrating that we had someone go down the day after the supplement period had finished. And I was really frustrated. I'm like, oh man, like we actually can't top up our list for another 3 or 4 months until the mid-season. So I think Carlton and Melbourne are complaining to the AFL because they cut off the supplement period before we'd had a practice match. So every other team had a practice match and been able to decide who they wanted on their list, but we hadn't. So I'm hoping it gets reopened because it just seems ridiculous that we wouldn't have a run through before getting to decide our final list spot. But if not, we've got a blank spot on the list for 3 months, which is frustrating.
It is frustrating, and it feels like Angus Brayshaw all over again, not able to shore up that spot last year as well when he retired due to concussion. So it is super frustrating, and there is news that has actually officially come out. The two clubs have complained. They're hoping that the AFL will look into it. It's super, super disappointing. Do you expect big injuries like that on the eve of the season in a match sim? I mean, it's AFL footy. Like this can happen at any juncture. It can happen in training. Unfortunately, it's happened yesterday. So for me, the most perplexing thing is it feels logical. Like, why wouldn't you just keep it open for a little bit longer so that every single club had the liberty to use it if they needed to use it? It just feels weird that we're not allowed to use it and why they've cut it off so short. Just another like strange AFL decision.
Yeah.
And there's a myriad of decisions that the AFL make, particularly around the tribunal and the review system And this one just seems odd. Like, why wouldn't you give us, North Melbourne, Carlton and St Kilda, who all played yesterday, the opportunity to use it if it's there? Why are you closing it off now? Just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, the timing was really strange, and like I don't really understand why it's not open till like the week before round one. Like I don't really get it. Like obviously there is a reason for it, but it doesn't like I don't know whether you need to shore up your list so then the VFL team can shore up their list. Like I don't get it from top to tail, but yeah, surely it gets reopened because it feels like a bit of a stitch up, especially like I know Jai Cully, he's a small forward, so you know losing a defender and then including a small forward into your list doesn't, you know, it's not a like for like replacement, but he was really close with us getting on a list. So I feel like, yeah, if he misses out on an opportunity, it would be a bit stiff. But yeah, quick shout out to Jagger Smith. That was heartbreaking news.
Yeah.
It was such a innocuous knock. It didn't look as obvious as the Andy Moniz Wakefield injury, but he's gone down for 12 months as well. And I don't know, I really do feel for those under 18 types who they've waited all their life, they get drafted, and then it's just a countdown to realising the dream. So I know Andy played a little bit last year, and not being able to see him for 2025 is heartbreaking, but he sort of got to live the dream in the middle of last season. So just knowing that Jagger gets that delayed start, I really feel for the kid.
Feels like Christian Petracca.
It does, yeah. Yeah.
Of course, ACL, pick number 2 in his draft. Jagger Smith, pick number 3 in his draft. It's gut-wrenching. Your heart goes out to a kid because he's been in the system for a while now. He probably knew he was going to play AFL footy by the time he hit 14, 15.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there waiting for your opportunity. I feel like the draft as well just gets built up so much now. There's so much hype around these kids. They've all got to do their media commitments and those types of things. It's like you already know the player before he's even set foot in a training facility at the AFL. So I feel for him. We were on the phone actually when I was driving back from Lawn today and the news came in, and we both were a little bit heartbroken for him. And you are, particularly with young kids when they're coming through and they show so much promise, and it doesn't matter what club they play for, even if you loathe Carlton, to all the DeeBrief listeners. Like, you just love seeing these kids go about their footy. So very, very sad, disappointing for him, but he'll be back bigger and better. There's no doubt about it. Now, mate, we'll get stuck into match sim and look at some of the pointers from yesterday. But before I go into individuals, I just wanted to speak about the fitness aspect. And I think this is one thing that you were pushing on your Instagram account and on Twitter yesterday after the game, and I totally agree with you. The one thing for me, every time I look at a preseason game, is I'm like, are they fit? Are they running out the game well? And yesterday they were running on top of the ground. They overpowered the Roos. We know North Melbourne are probably a good 3, 4, 5 years off from being anything. No disrespect. They probably know that. But the fitness for me, it was there. It looked like we had a group of players that had put in the work over the course of the preseason, and that was a big, big tick for me. And then the other thing is just the notable absentees that weren't in the squad. So Max Gawn, Petracca, Langdon, Salem, May, Fritter. The list goes on. There's probably more that I've missed there. And all of those players, Rolls Royces in their own right. So the fact we had so many guns out, but the fact that we had a raw group, we still had a bit of experience out there, no doubt, but we had a bit of a raw group, a lot of youngsters, and they just look supremely fit. So for me, Kados, that was probably the most pleasing thing from an overall perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I'm such an idiot. When I tuned into KO and they had those cameras that didn't have high definition and there's these wide shots, and I was looking at some of the builds and the body types, and I turned to my mate while we were watching on the couch and I said, they're not defined enough. Like the blokes that, like, they're not fit. There's muscles aren't popping out. Like, I don't think we're fit. Like, look at Van Rooyen. He looks like a school kid, because when the high definition wasn't kicked in on these crappy KO cameras, I couldn't see any signs of fitness and improvement. And then I saw some of the snaps on the Instagram, some of the photos, and Clary looked quite defined and fit. Roo's got shoulders coming out of his shoulders. So they do look rock hard. It's something that we haven't been able to question for a long, long time, is the fitness, probably for 5 or 6 years now. And we always start seasons pretty well. We struggle to see them out, unfortunately, but I feel like every pre-season match sim or trial games, we're always sort of jumping out, winning those games early, which it seems to set us up in season. So it was good to see. I was surprised by how big the margin got, considering they probably had 5 of their best 22 out, but it felt like we had like 10. So it did honestly at times feel like I was watching the VFL team out there. And to see us get it done so convincingly, even though results don't really matter, was really cool. But yeah, the fitness looks amazing. I'm hoping we've got that balance right over the preseason. Like we've had a couple more weeks longer of a preseason, but I'm hoping we haven't had to jam in as much as what we've done in the previous couple of preseasons, where we've, made semi-finals, had long, grueling seasons, and then we come back a little bit later compared to other teams. So we've got to fit a lot in a short amount of time. Hopefully we've been able to time it a little bit better this year.
I think so. Max Gawn spoke about that on Broden Kelly's podcast, funnily enough, when they interviewed him leading into, I think, the Granny. Brisbane and Sydney Granny. And he said it felt like 2022, 2023 and 21, 22, 23 all blended into one.
Yeah.
A 3-year period. And he said it just felt like they never had a break. And this is the first time, in his words, that it felt like they actually got a genuine break. And he said that he thought that it was going to really set us up. Hearing those words is so comforting, but then also yesterday, just seeing a first little glimpse of the players looking supremely fit, looking like they'd had a nice freshen up and a good reset. And Clayton Oliver is the epitome of that, because he was bursting away from contests. He was linking up well. He got 22 disposals in 3 quarters. He was taking the piss a little bit. You could just really tell with the way he was balking players and just making better decisions. I thought last season he was prone to just the handball happy crap and just handballing it over his head to absolutely nobody and not really using his legs coming out of a contest. And I think we saw so much more of that yesterday. And again, just got to preface, the sample size is extremely small, but the reality is we're talking about a player who had an injury interrupted pre-season and some other things going on in his life, and he didn't get that under his belt, and then that flowed through to his football in 2024, where he just looked out of shape, if we're going to be really frank and honest about it. And yesterday we saw a player that looked completely in shape. He looked like an absolute brute, and he was doing some of the things from a confidence perspective that we love to see Clayton Oliver do, which makes him such an elite midfielder. And it is using his legs, and it is making better decisions with ball in hand. And I think a lot of that just correlates with getting a preseason under your belt and just being in a fresher, better mental state. And by all reports and everything I've heard, his personal life is all in order. He's on track. He's happy. He's in a better environment. He's in a better headspace. And I think yesterday for me just showed that this is a player that will get back to the very, very top of the AFL in terms of elite midfielders. And it's that whole adage of form is temporary, class is permanent. And I think that's what Clayton Oliver is. And I would be absolutely gobsmacked and shocked if we don't see him in that top brass in the comp this year. Just gobsmacked, because if a bloke's done it for 7-8 years at that level, he's had a bit of a wane since midway through 2023 when he got that big hamstring injury that kept him out for 10, 11 weeks. Like, that's it, right? Like, a guy, you can't lose those powers. You can't lose that ability.
Yeah, hamstring, and then he had the hand, and then PCLs and ribs, and he just hasn't had much luck the last couple of years, Claz. So I'm just hoping. Like, I just want to see like a 5 or 6 week patch where we go, yeah, that is unbelievable. This is the Clayton Oliver we know. And I know that the standard that he set for himself is very high, but I want to see those high possession games. I want to see him being a class and a half above in and around the midfield. His handballing and putting people into better positions is something I don't think we've seen for probably 18 months. So, yeah, I just want to see a bit of a patch of work at the highest level. And Hopefully we get to see that because we need it. Our midfield, I think, felt like one of the worst in the league last year. And I think statistically it wasn't that flash. So we need him, Track, Viney and the boys to get to work because, and I don't know how quickly you can fix a midfield with bad habits, but if we could go from, say, the 15th best midfield in the comp to, say, the 3rd or 4th, it feels like it could completely change the fortunes of our season. So those boys have the keys to the football club. I think they realise that. I think Track and Clary realise that, the difference between the D's being a good team, an average team or a great team is them in the midfield. Like that, it's up to them. So I'm hoping that they can come out, sort of take on the responsibility and make us a better side in 2025.
We'll just stay on midfield. I think I'm really into the idea of, I've said this many times before, and I feel like 95% of the supporter base is probably into this, so it's not a big claim from me at all. So calm the fuck down, Norton. I called myself Norton. That was really weird as well. First potty for the year, so we'll get the cobwebs dusted off. But Trent Rivers. So Trent going in there as a full-time mid. Yesterday, a good example. I think he gets 26. If fantasy points is anything to go by, someone tallied them up. Sorry, I can't credit the particular person that did that, but I saw it out there on the internet, and apparently he was the highest-ranked player on the field, which was no real surprise to me. He looked like a player that had been playing midfield for a while, and he looked like a player that was just at ease with his role. I think he knows exactly what he's doing now. To be able to go into the midfield after Christian's unfortunate injury on King's birthday, and for him to get his opportunity to go into the middle, and we saw shades of it. There were some big games from him last year, notably the amazing goal that he kicked against North Melbourne at the G on the run. I think he just understands what it means to be a midfielder now. That's the type of vibe that I got from him yesterday, the way he was accumulating, the way that he was bursting out of contests, the way that he was taking players on, and also just hitting up targets and making some smart decisions with ball in hand. So I feel like Trent is a permanent mid, although you said it in the car, absolutely nailed it. We might have a round one problem on our hands with GWS and their prolific small forwards. So the likes of Daniels, Green, of course, one of the best in the comp, and Darcy Jones. And because Andy Montes-Wakefield's out with an ACL and we don't have Judd McVie available, might have to rotate or roll Rivdog back behind the ball for that one, just for a game, because I feel like we're going to be a little bit stretched in that department in the opening game.
Yeah, it feels like the universe is testing Goody because, when he makes decisions, he normally sticks with them, which I like because, and there's a stubbornness, but there's also like a conviction to Simon Goodwin's decision making. So when he put Harrison Petty forward, there was so much scope to send him behind the ball. I think May went down and Lever went down and we missed other, personnel throughout the year, and he just stuck fat. So I like that. I like his stubbornness at times to see things out. But sometimes you got to not drop the ego, but sort of change the plans on the fly. And it feels like Trent Rivers finally poised to have a big year in the midfield. So for round one to make a switch and put him on a Toby Green, to me seems a little bit frustrating, but he might have to do it. It might have to be a decision that he has to come to because, the universe is testing Goody. Like you've got this elite back pocket / half back sitting in your midfield. We've got plenty of midfield depth, and now you've lost 2 back pockets, and we probably don't have someone obvious that's going to come into that role. So does Simon Goodwin balk, or does he hold and let Trent Rivers rip round one at the MCG against the Giants?
Because who would it be? Bowie on Daniels, I reckon.
Tajbo Woden probably starts now.
Taji could do a defensive role, couldn't he? And then that might potentially give you the chance of keeping Riv in the middle, because I reckon Blake Howes can play on a small.
He can play on a tall as well, I reckon. He can play sort of mid. Maybe Jake Lever can play tall and small. Actually, that has a role.
With Jake, and Ben Brown actually said it really well on the commentary, and loved Benny Brown on the commentary, by the way. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Such a lovely man. But he spoke about how Jake Lever gets a little bit lost when he's defending one-on-one, which I thought was kind of cool because they've just recently been teammates together. He holds him in the highest regard. He was the skipper yesterday, and everyone knows what I think of him. I think he should be our next skipper of this football club, and he may well be, who knows. But to say that, Jake's a bit of a deer in the headlights in one-on-one contests, you want to free him up as an interceptor, I like that because I totally agree. I want a world where Jake just gets to zone off and just do his own thing, and he's made a career of doing it, and he's exceptional at it, one of the best to do it in the last 6-7 years in the comp. So Howes might be the one that has to go to one of those smalls, and then Bowie, maybe Wowie. I think you've nailed it there again, mate. Like, it might allow Trent to just stay in the midfield because clearly it's what we want to do. Like, Goody wants him to be a full-time midfielder, and I think he's going to have a massive, massive say in proceedings. I really do. I think it's going to be a huge year for Ribdog. And he's just at the level and the age now where he's probably just ready to absolutely let rip. And it's probably a good little segue here into one bloke that unfortunately is going to miss the first 3 rounds, because yesterday was another example again, and I know it's match sim, but he's an absolute class above everyone on that field yesterday. He's a brute. He's a little tank. You can't tackle Cozzy. And the way that he was just roaming through midfield, handball receive, hitting up a target, bidding goals outside 50 for fun, just making it look stupidly easy. I know you can get caught up in big statements, but I'll make a big statement right now. This guy looks like he is ready for an All-Australian year. I genuinely feel like we're going to see him come into his prime in the next 2 to 3 years, and the next 2 to 3 years is the contract saga and what's going to hang over this footy club and over Cozzy. And someone said it to me the other day, and apologies, I can't remember off the top of my head who it was because I speak to a lot of Melbourne supporters week on week, as you can probably understand, Kados. And he said, I just wish we could go through a season without contract sagas.
Yeah.
Or without off-field issues. And that feels like that's all we've had since the flag. And I think we're going to have to go through it again with Kysaiah. Fucking hell, mate. Like, he's generational. He's going to absolutely explode this year. He's just there now. You can tell in his body, and you can just tell that he understands what it takes to be one of the best in the competition. And he showed glimpses of it, and he showed weeks where he strung together really strong form. But I just feel like he's going to be the complete package now, and we'll see it on a more consistent basis. And far out, it'll just be absolutely devastating if we don't see Cozzy running around the red and blue next year. Maybe we keep hold of him for next year and then he leaves the year after. I hope he stays because this guy's going to the very top, and I think every Melbourne supporter in the back of their minds, not every Melbourne supporter, but I feel like the vast majority of us have got PTSD from what happened with the Wiz, and for it to happen all over again would just be devastating.
Yeah, he is about to explode. He's untackleable. No one could tackle him in that Freo game. No one could tackle him against the Roos. His feet are so quick. He's so agile. He's brutal. Like the way he bodied out Luke McDonald in a marking contest was yeah, I don't want to say embarrassing for Luke, but he did sort of embarrass him in that situation. He sort of embarrassed LDU when he gave him the fend off. So he just looks like a little meatball. He is so strong. Through the low definition KO cameras, I could see some high definition muscles on Cozzy. So he's about to explode. I can't believe we have to wait till round 4, which is like the 5th week of the season, given opening round, to see the man run around. We're still, yeah, I know. Against the Catters, they'll probably chuck some small Irishman on him who's just going to get a bath, unfortunately. But
good luck to Geelong. Like,
yeah,
you're not ready for a Cos coming in fresh.
I know. We got to play it down there as well. It's so frustrating. But yeah, he's a freak. He's an absolute freak. This contract stuff is really annoying. But it feels different to the Luke Jackson scenario. So we knew that Luke Jackson was out of contract, so we didn't really have any leverage. There's a lot of leverage here. No matter what happens with Cozzy, we'll be compensated accordingly, which is handy. But it doesn't feel like he's desperate to leave. It feels like, yeah, well, just from the vibes that I'm picking up, it feels like, potentially it might be slightly more ideal to head back, but it's not a dire scenario where he absolutely needs to get back to WA. I thought Freo were very clever in picking up. Obviously, Shea Bolton was someone that they'd earmarked for a while, but just sort of adding Quinton Narkle from the delisted free agency list, who's another close friend of his, was very clever by them. But it's not going to come without a price, and they've got a couple of $1 million players on their list already. They've probably got Luke Jackson would be close, Sean Darcy, Brayshaw, Young, Sarong, the big kahuna signed a big deal. So they're going to have to move around something to get him in. I feel like we'll get appropriately compensated if it does happen. So yeah, I don't know. It feels slightly better than the Luke Jackson situation, but it is frustrating that these conversations keep happening. I was really frustrated also after the Indigenous All-Stars game. He was interviewed from a WA reporter who is a journo, I think, for SEN over there. And he had some light banter with his first question, like, well done, Cozzy, you seem to really like Optus Stadium. Obviously, you won the flag, but and Cozzy answered really well. And then he sort of wanted to go one more and have some banter with Cozzy, but also I think it came across a little bit condescending when he said, oh, wouldn't you like to move over here and play here every week? And Coz was like, oh, yeah, that'd be all right, but I love Melbourne. I think Coz answered it perfectly. I think Coz answered that presser that he got thrown under the bus with pretty well. In its complete sentence, Coz said, like, I love the footy club, I love Simon Goodwin, like I love the D's. And I just have to spend my time there or whatever. But people grabbed that quote where he sort of misspoke and ran with it. So I don't know. I'm going to enjoy the 12 months, the 24 months, the 36 months we've got with him. Hopefully we can convince him to stay. But I'm just going to try and park it and just enjoy what we've got, which is Coz, Track, Clary running around at the MCG together around round 5 or 6.
Yeah, round 5 or 6, I think it is. Well, his first game at the MCG won't be until round 6 against, I think it's Freo. Wow, off the top of my head, because round 5 is the Dons in gather round, and then we go back and play Freo in round 6. So isn't that just really weird that his first game at the G going to be against?
He's going to tear them a new one. I just get the feeling some players, before they go to a club, they put on a clinic against them. Like Rory Lobb, before he went to the Bulldogs.
He's not there yet. He's not there yet.
Yeah, true.
He's not there.
We can convince him.
It's a weird one for me because the first thing you think of is, okay, do the club have to start competing and contending again for the flag? Like, do we have to be there to satisfy his needs? Or is that just completely immaterial? It's got nothing to do with this situation whatsoever. It's purely about him just wanting to get back home, inverted commas, or around friends and loved ones. Getting back to an environment that's warmer weather. Like, he's spoken about it. He doesn't like the cold over here, and that's completely understandable. I reckon a lot of people don't like the cold over here during the wintry months. Going to the MCG during July on a Saturday night like we did against the Roos, or it was late June, I think it was, mate, that was grim.
Yeah.
That was grim. It was like low 20s there. The North fans were mental. We were going through the motions. Our supporters were really drab that night because obviously the season wasn't panning out the way we thought it would. So I get it. The Seagulls are having a feast because no one's sitting in the Shane Warne stand. Like, I understand. But the one thing I don't understand, I don't think anyone knows, is what is the motivation for Cozzy? Is it purely homesickness? Is it to get around loved ones? Or is it a combination of the two things that plus also Melbourne just getting back into contention? We don't know. And the other thing, just on that article that came out, and don't worry about the journo who's being cheeky because that was shit, but the article for me, no disrespect to Cozzy, and this is the same for many, many players in the AFL system. This is why certain players get thrown up for media duties. He's not well media trained, the kid. And he's still just a kid as well. And he's shy. Cozzy's a shy guy. Like we've seen it with the amazing documentary that the club put out when him and Clary go out to the community. He doesn't like getting in front of the camera. He doesn't like speaking to the media. And I 100% agree with you. Those comments can get taken out of context. Just it pops into the brain. It's what he says on the fly. I don't think we can look into it too much. And the other thing that we've got to probably do, and I think this podcast moving forward, we can't not address the Cos situation as it stands. Like we have to speak about it. But for me, moving forward, I really genuinely hope that most of the things that come out of the media are conjecture. There's no real substance to it, and that we can kind of just park it, as you've said, and get on with the footy and just watch him and look at the talented footballer that he is, just putting on a clinic every week and not really have to worry about it too much, because I've no doubt there'll be a lot of shit that's written and a lot of crap that's written. And I might make it my mission to just go and sound out all those journos and all those people that are writing things that have no fact-based information whatsoever. But I think for the podcast in this forum, if that's the case, I reckon we just go on. The show goes on and we don't have to feed into it too much, because the last thing I think Melbourne supporters want is their own supporters and myself and you and all the other boys, when they jump on the show for this year, just constantly talking about it. We don't want that. So I think that's a little pledge or commitment that I'm going to make to the community this year, that we're not going to delve into it unless the links and the information that come out look actually tangible. Like, is it a quote from a manager? Is it a quote from Cos himself? Yep. If it's none of that and it's just hearsay, get fucked. I'm not talking about it.
I just want to hear, like back in the day, there would be reporting that like breaking news, this is happening. Like this is happening. The call's been made and this is how it's transpiring. But the reporting over last trade period, there was like tweets going out about if this happens, and I have heard, and like the amount of vague terms that we used in the tweets was like really frustrating me. And I actually retweeted a couple and like quote tweeted them and just said like, I've just never seen breaking news, if and maybe and potentially, and I might have heard. And I'm like, oh, just break the news when the news is broken. Like, why are we breaking news about if, buts and maybes? It was a really strange summer for us because, I don't know, for a small, humble, irrelevant club that people perceive us to be, we're great fodder for media. Like, we have stars that are in the zeitgeist that people want to talk about. So, we don't get the raging crowds, but an article about Clary, Track, Cos, Gorn, May, Lever, like people, Goody, people click on them. So that's why we've just been sort of whipping boys for the media the last little while. But yeah, I'm happy to park it. We can't change anything. It's either going to happen or it doesn't. We've got the upper hand. We've got the leverage. I think we'll be well compensated, and we're going to see the best Kysaiah Pickett this year than we have before. So I'm just going to enjoy it. Like, there was a stage over the summer that I thought I wouldn't see Track, Clary and Cos running around in the red and blue at the MCG. So it's almost like sparked me back into being ridiculously grateful that we have A-graders on our list and we get to watch them at the moment. So, yeah, I don't know. I'll park it till then and be grateful that they're running around for us now.
Love it. Couldn't agree more. And do not listen to Sam Edmund, Jay Clark or Tom Morris. That's my advice. Let's get back to the match, Sam. Sharpie. We have to talk about Sharpie.
Oh, Sharpie.
Sharpie. Oh, the nickname as well. It's just perfect. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Harry Sharp. What else are you going to call him? He was great. Covers the ground so well. Elite runner, but that was the profile. Everyone knows about it. That was his one-wood, as they like to say at Brisbane. But boy, oh boy, goal sense. Genuine goal sense, Kados. And kick 4 yesterday and just made it look dead easy. He was awesome.
Yeah, there's elite runners, but this is like best runner to ever play in the AFL style. Like one of the best athletes that we've ever seen in the AFL from a running capacity. And what I like when Tim Lamb speaks, when he he's in the trade period is he mentions little things that gives you a hint of like the development of the player. So when he was talking about Harry Sharp, he was saying comes from a good program within the Brisbane Lions. So I think someone like Tim Lamb, when he goes recruiting, looks at where they've been playing, what comp they've been playing in underneath the AFL, which obviously is the VFL if you're playing for the Brisbane Lions, because the development of him is unbelievable. So he's ready to go. Like he's ready for senior football. He's coming in for opportunity. I think there's a role for him on the wing for us. And I'm pumped to see him just running up and down the wings at the MCG. But I thought we'd be getting like a 16 to 18 possession getting, more defensive, cover the ground, sort of Ed Langdon type that doesn't impact as much. But to see him get on the scoreboard and some of the goals he kicked, yeah, there was genuine footy IQ involved in them. So that's sort of like risen his stocks up in my brain a little bit.
Big time. Is he a chance for round one? Absolutely. I'm almost going to be shocked if he's not in there.
Are you going to lock him in? Are you prepared to lock him in?
Yeah, I'm prepared to lock him in because Caleb Wins are going to half back, and we're going to speak about a lot of things over and over again before we get to round one. But that is a move that apparently is happening, which is exciting. He's just out at the moment with, I believe, a skin infection on his foot. So nothing too bad, and I expect him to play against Freo and the Pracky in the not-so-distant future. But he goes to half-back. Sharpie can come in on the wing. Ed Langdon as well, midfield role for him, apparently. So it opens up the door for Sharpie, and I think Sharpie's a lock. I'm just going to put him in my round one team, and you're going to do the same, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. I like him. I like his size. I like his athleticism. I like his hair.
I like his name.
Named I like after his tan.
Son. Named after my son, Harry, so it all bodes well. I like his little gap tooth.
I like it too. He looks like a big puppy dog. I love Harry Sharp, and I think he's going to kick snags on the G for us.
No, I really like him. So I reckon he's a lock for round one. We have to talk about Roo as well. If we're talking about 4-goal contributors, I just said this to Scotty in the car. And by the way, Scotty's losing his mind. Absolutely losing the plot. He's put a bet on just for everyone's sake, and I'm not a betting man, and we'll never have a gambling sponsor on this show because we're just against it, and we've been offered big money and we always knock it back because it's just not what we do here. But Scotty's put a bet on, and he'll win $59,000. And
my goodness,
$59,000 is if Melbourne win the flag and Clary wins the Brownlow. So he is of the mindset that it's a fait accompli, it's a guarantee. And he was saying it in the car to me. And we also spoke about Jacob Van Rooyen. And Scotty goes, I've missed an opportunity here. He goes, I've done Clary into D's flag for 59 grand payout, and I should have done JVR to win the Coleman. And I'm like, shut up, Scotty. But God, he's funny. But JVR, very good yesterday, and my big point to the big fella Scotty was he just looks like a man now. Like that's the big difference for me. We've been waiting, I would say, patiently, and I think Van Rooyen's development has been absolutely fine. There's a few naysayers out there, particularly opposition supporters. I don't think it's been a Melbourne supporter thing that Jacob Van Rooyen's not on the right path. I think 95% of Melbourne supporters have the utmost confidence that this guy is going to be a serious player for this football club. I feel like he's arriving, and I feel like he's going to arrive in 2025, and we'll do our big official season preview with a few of the lads in a few weeks' time, but I'm going to let the cat out of the bag already. He's my breakout player of the year. I think he goes from the amount of goals he kicked last year, the 30-odd pitch hitting in the ruck as well, I might add, to a player that ends up kicking 45-plus or in the vicinity of high 40s, even early 50s. Like, I reckon he's that primed, he's that ready to go, and it is simply put for me, a kid that has turned into a man, and you can see that in his physique, and I think leading patterns as well yesterday.
Yeah.
Something that's been highlighted, I believe, by Chappie as the new forwards coach. I just reckon it's all just boding really well for Jacob, and I can see a big, big year happening for him, and I can see him posting up those numbers.
I did notice the leading patterns for some reason. He got really good separation on Aiden Core and took a mark on the lead. And I remember just looking at that going, that looked easy. Like instead of him standing in the goal square and wrestling three blokes and taking the clunks that I know that he can, it was just really good method and got the push off and had the target hit as well. I don't know if it was Harvey Langford or someone else. Might have been Billings spotting him up. But, yeah, it was a good performance by Jacob Van Rooyen. And in terms of his development, I would say he's one of the best developed players that we've had. Like, instead of throwing him to the Wolves and playing him at 18, we protected him and got some senior footy in at the VFL into his body. And there was times where we probably could have bit a little bit earlier and brought him in. But instead of putting the weight of the world on him and showing him to the AFL too early, we just kept him down at Casey and he had a really good season his first year, was ready round 1 or 2 the following season, and he hasn't looked back. And I like that, last year he was a little bit inconsistent and went in and out of form, but there's no point dropping him. I didn't really see, well, one, there was no one smashing the door down to take his position. Like that full forward position was his, really. Not even to lose. It was just a lock for him. But I just like that we exposed him for a year. He sort of had some form, went out of form, but had to handle that. So, yeah, I just feel like the development's almost been perfect. And, I've got people in and around my life who go for different teams who still question him a little bit. Like they say, oh, do you have any players under 22 that could be all Australians? And I go, yeah, I think we've got heaps. Like I think Judd McVie and Van Rooyen and Windsor and I think Colton Tholstrup sort of made of the right stuff. I know that I probably wouldn't put him in that bracket just yet. But Jacob Van Rooyen to me is just like, yeah, absolutely, he will be an All-Australian one day. And they're not so convinced. They say, they're not so certain about it. But I think he's tracking beautifully and I think he'll have a big impact this year. And he kicked a couple of easy ones on Saturday, which I think he needs to get into his game. Like, get that separation, mark it 30 out, go back and slot it. None of this, like, crashing packs and sitting on heads for every possession. Like, it's great that he's got that in his wheelhouse and he's made of the right stuff to enjoy contact. But, yeah, just getting a couple of easy ones on the run, that's good method, and I liked it.
Method, good, his favourite word. Now, my dog is annoying the shit out of me. I don't know if you can hear him, but he's barking. So to anyone listening or watching, apologies. There he goes again. So anyway, we'll get through in difficult circumstances while Wallace barks at someone just peacefully walking by my house. I can't really stop him because we're going to go the whole way through and the wife and kids are at the beach. So it's just me and the doggo, but just shut up, Wallace. Please just shut up. He's a beautiful thing, but he doesn't realise you're not an intimidating dog, mate. You're a golden retriever. Like, just shut up. Like, if someone looked at you in the window and you were barking at them, they're not scared of you, brother.
Yeah.
You're a golden retriever. Just a few tactical things, which I really liked. And I don't know if we'll continue to see them because it's a match sim. But, look, my hope is we do, because I've been crying out for the whole idea of please stop the long, slow kick down the line, giving teams a chance to set up. So one thing I really liked is I felt like there was a concerted effort for us to look inboard when we're at halfback, which is a pretty obvious thing because what you want to do is open up the field. So for us to look for the corridor kick, I was into that. And there was one thing I was looking out for in the coverage. And then the other thing that was really noticeable, and I think a lot of Melbourne supporters have spoken about this, but just the bigger focus on the run and gun, the handball as well. I thought that was awesome, creating more overlaps, which is something that we haven't seen enough of from this Melbourne side in the last few years. And I did make mention of it in the post-match notes in the report that I put up on the DeeBrief, and it's going to really annoy the kick it forward brigade in the MCC this year, but they can get stuffed. You know, when like they're just buggering around with it through handball and everyone's going, just kick the thing, kick it forward. So it's going to piss off those people. But I think it's the way to go, and we've seen with modern footy, particularly Collingwood, and I know we all hate them, but I must admit from an objective point of view, I have admired the way that they have done that run and gun style from halfback and they've mastered it, and I think Melbourne need to take a little bit of that into this season. And yesterday I got a glimpse and a hint that it looks like we probably will.
I wonder if there's any way that it's possible to do that safely. Like, or are we just going to have to accept when we're at the G that we're going to make some absolute clangers at times when we persevere with this game style? Because we've always been safe with ball in hand. So, I'm hoping we can go quicker and make the right decisions. And we have a game style that can still have us be one of the better defensive sides in the comp. But I just get the feeling you're going to have to accept some errors. But off the back of that, there's going to be some great passages of play that we can get around.
Big time. I think you made a really good point in the car as well when we were talking. And
I've done my best work in the car so far.
You have. Oh, you're doing good work here too, mate. But just the point you made around the fact that we have to play another preseason game against Fremantle, and just how in an ideal world, maybe you only play the one practice game. So maybe it ends up just being a match sim in the same way that it was yesterday against North Melbourne. And that's it. We don't get on the plane. We don't go over to Freo, and we don't play another game against them. Now, the detriment of that, the downside is the fact that guys like Gawn, Petracca, Viney, Salem May, Langdon, Fritter, blah, 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 they don't feature in a game coming into the season. But the idea of just there being a lot more errors in the first few rounds if you only have one match sim, I don't mind that because everyone's in it together and it's going to be sloppy. But when you're training a new game plan and you're doing it over the course of 4 or 5 months or however long it's been in pre-season, you'd want to hope, really want to hope, that Melbourne have not mastered it because you don't necessarily know what it's going to be like until you're under the heat of match conditions, big crowd turnout, the pressure of playing for premiership points, all those types of things. But the reality is it might be a little bit sketchy, as you're saying there, in the first few rounds. You've got to stay the course, though. If we want to adapt and we want to become a football club that's contending again at the very top, we have to change. Like, it's so obvious we have to change. We cannot live off the idea of grinding, contest defense. We can retain that DNA, but there needs to be a balance. And I don't want to live in a world anymore where Goody's sitting there from a tactical standpoint is like, we're just going to make this just absolutely dog shit. We're going to make it just really, really hard for the opposition to score against us. And we're going to just try and like eke out a 60 versus 64 win or a 67 win. It's not going to get us anywhere. We can't keep doing that anymore. So the idea of us adapting a new game plan and us potentially making a few errors out there on the wide expanses of the MCG with this new run and gun style, it is what it is. We're just going to have to cop it. As long as offensively we're kicking a big enough score to win games, if we're a little bit leaky in that sense off half back, so be it, mate. Like it really is what it is, in my opinion. We have to adapt or we're just going to stay where we are, in my opinion.
And we don't need a lot more goals. Like, I think we just need to get to 90 points every week. Like, we get stuck in the 60s, the mid-60s a lot, and we'll be, on 55 halfway through the third quarter and end up on 63, and it's like we burnt chances late. We just get stuck in that, 60 to 70 range. So, it'd be amazing if we could do it Brisbane and kick 120 every week. But we don't have to. You just need to get to 90 and you're going to win most games of footy. And I think our profile from a best 22 standpoint is sort of pacey now. I think if you compared it to 2021, player for player, we've got a bit of pace on the ball. Like Windsor, Harry Sharp, Bowie, Rivers, Cade Chandler's playing consistent footy, Cos. It feels like we've got a bit of a quicker team. So maybe the personnel might have caught up to the new game plan that we're trying to wheel out now. But there's going to be frustrating times. I feel like we're going to be really inconsistent. I feel like some games we're going to win by 40 points and some games we're going to lose by 4 or 5 goals. But hopefully by that midpoint of the year, it's settled and we can attack the back half of the season with a bit of a settled game plan, a settled 22. We sort of know what we're getting now because for a couple of years, we've been filling holes on the run. We switched the game plan like halfway through last year after a couple of big defeats. And I think Goody came out in a interview and said that was probably not the right idea. Like panicking after getting flogged by West Coast and Freo probably didn't hold us in good stead. But there are going to be some clangers, and we're just going to have to sort of stomach it, hoping that we can see light at the end of the tunnel with this game plan.
It'll be hard for the MCC brigade, trust me. And you know who you are. Get behind the boys. Don't the moaning and groaning in that section kills me at times, and I'm sure people listening to this podcast can attest to that. But we might actually talk about the round one team really, really quickly, and then we're going to speak about Track's comments that he made with the Mitch Cleary interview for Channel 7, and then a little bit on Jackie Henderson, and then we'll wrap up, Dos. But just before I do round one, and this kind of is a round one question anyway, Big Tommy Campbell. He moves well. He moves really well for a veteran, and he looks trim and he looks fit. And I thought he showed some really good signs yesterday in the match sim. I feel like there's a definite to Ruck world that we could go for. It does not feel Brodie and Max. Brodie and Max was tough because two premier ruckmen trying to take the mantle. Bit of ego involved there. Tommy Campbell's come in, nicest bloke of all time, a great replacement for Ben Brown. So we ship off the nicest bloke of all time because his knees have failed him. What a great servant Benny Brown was. And then we bring in the second nicest bloke of all time, if that makes sense. And apparently they're good friends, which again makes so much sense.
Good for culture.
Yeah, great for culture, but also a player that can play and he can compete. And he thumped Maxie's throat, for God's sake, in training. He ruined his throat. So he's a fierce competitor. He's a journeyman. He's a lovely fella, by all reports. Great family man, and someone that I think might actually end up playing more games than a lot of Melbourne supporters are probably anticipating. So it begs the question, round one, up against the Giants, do we roll with Tommy Campbell?
We don't. But I love Tommy Campbell. I love him.
I've said it, and you've just gone, nah.
Yeah, I know. You've given me the half volley outside off, and I've just sort of passed it backwards. But no, I'm a big Tommy Campbell man. I thought his competitiveness on the weekend was really good. And it's nice knowing that we've got a ready-made, like, enormous human waiting in the VFL. Like, I feel like whenever players have gone down, we've always got these undersized types, or maybe like Tom McDonald has to start rucking, or Van Rooyen has to start rucking. But knowing that we've got a Goliath just waiting in the wings is exciting. And I was saying to you in the car that I get the feeling, whether it's because we rest Max for a little bit, and touch wood, I'm hoping that it's not through injury, but I get the feeling Tom Campbell is going to become a cult figure. He's going to play a patch of games and be involved in critical contests, and he's going to announce himself in big games for us at the MCG and surprise a few and impact the footy club in ways we had not expected. I can see it where Tom Campbell takes a Leo Barry mark, or maybe he does a Max Gawn mark and goal after the siren, or he gets us over the line against the odds. I can just see Tom Campbell doing something that leaves him in Melbourne folklore forever, sort of Mitch Hannon style.
I like that. It's a big shout. How many games does Tommy Campbell play?
He plays 7.
7?
3 of those will be with Max. 4 of those will be giving Max a rest.
I like that. And I think Melbourne will finally take the approach to rest Max.
Have to.
Max. And Geelong have done it so well. And I speak about Geelong all the time. Their squad management is exceptional. Just take a leaf out of their book. Come on, Dees. Now, I need to apologise because we're 54 minutes in, Dos, and we're looking to wrap up soon. And we have not spoken about number 19 because you just tweaked me there.
Oh, boy.
Mitchy Hannon. I went,
oh, wow.
He used to wear number, what have I done?
Oh, my golly gosh.
54 minutes, and we have not spoken about the new number 19, and there'll be so many young kids running around with this number in the future. Seriously, he's going to sell out a tops, this kid. But Harvey Langford looks...
Deary me.
Legit. He looks the business. He looks like Patrick Cripps and Marcus Bontempelli reincarnated. The two of them melded together. and that is the biggest wank I've ever heard. The kid hasn't even played a game of footy yet. But I'm going to go there because this is what we do. We just come out with the stupidest, most outlandish calls ever on this podcast. But in all honesty, to take a step back, wow, we've got a little gem here, and not even a little gem. He's a bull. He's
enormous.
He's 18, DOS.
Standing next to Jacob Van Rooyen with the dodgy KO cameras, they were the same size. It was ridiculous. It is hats off to Tim Lamb and Jason Taylor. They have brought in 4 first-round draft picks in the last 2 years, and I know last year we slipped out and finished 14th, but we've been contending. Like, how are we getting this sort of talent in while I think we're still in the window? We have just done that so well. It's been really impressive by them. But when Harvey Langford got recruited, I thought we were getting Cripper, like just because of the centimetres that he's got in his height. You know, he's 190, 191 or something, which is absurd. But I thought we were getting a Cripper type, like just this tall, big bull. And then when they said on the coverage that we got Jack Crisp or Hayden Young, I went, oh, maybe we've just recruited someone completely different to what I had imagined. And man, he is a bit Jack Crisp-like. The way he can kick the footy,
yeah,
and he's so classy and skillful. Like, I think if you get drafted to Melbourne after 3 years training down at Casey, you are just a contested bull, regardless of what attributes you had coming into the footy club, which I love, the development. We just turn them into monsters. But if we turn Jack Crisp into a contested ball, we're going to have a player and a half. And some of his kicking, I think he hit Jeffo on the tit from 70 metres out, hit him right in the pocket, and it just looked unbelievable. So Harvey Langford is another lock for round 1. Tom Campbell, not so lockable, but Harry Sharp and Harvey Langford, absolute locks. And man, he's I don't think we've seen anyone like him step through the footy club before. So it's going to be really exciting to see which path his career takes. Like, does he go to the wing or the half back, or is he going to be an inside ball that kicks it as well as a Jack Crisp, Hayden Young type? He was exciting.
Very exciting. I think high half forward, mid rotation, something like that makes sense. And it makes more sense because Colt is going to be out for a while as well. And I think Harvey comes in, and no disrespect to Colton, I think he's going to be an absolute player for us in the future. But I think this kid just comes in, he's a level above in terms of where he is now. Like,
yeah,
that's the point I'm trying to make. But you're right, we've done well. Windsor's come in, he's been exceptional. Xavier Lindsay looked really good yesterday, poised. He's got a great boot on him. And we need more skillful players. And they're not lying to us, the recruiters, because they came out a couple of years ago and they're like, we need to find a bit more polish. And we were just crying out for polish on this podcast. Polish, polish, polish. We need better users. Benny Lee always talks about it. We are not skillful enough. Xavier Lindsay, love his skill set.
Oh, man. He was so cool, calm and collected, Xavier Lindsay.
Yep.
Any interview, I think he might have captained. Who did he play for?
Big country?
Yeah. No, who was his? Gippsland. I think he might have captained Gippy.
Yep.
And he just talks like he's 35 years old. Like, he just carries himself like a mature person. And he plays like it. Like, he's got sort of Salem type, sort of cool, calm and collected, finds the easy target, doesn't overcomplicate things, doesn't have to do anything flashy. Like, I think he's going to go under the radar throughout his career because he won't do anything that catches your eye, but he doesn't do much wrong. And that's what I really liked about Xavier Lindsay. He could be another inclusion for round 1 that I wouldn't have even thought of, 3 or 4 months ago. That's another skillful, mature, cool, calm, composed footballer that we get through the footy club. And also he's physical. Like, he got taken as more of that outside classy type player, but he loves it. He loves the contact. So terrific attributes to come into our side.
Now, Matt Jefferson, just quickly got to speak about him, and then I'm going to just throw names at you, and you're going to tell me whether you're a round 1 lock or not. So we'll go through that. But Matty Jefferson, we spoke about it in the car again, where you do your best work. And we likened him to, at the moment, and we don't want to sound disrespectful, and he will get games at AFL level. There's no doubt about it. So then we'll be able to make a better assessment of what he can bring to the side. But he feels a little bit Sam Schufter-Wiedemann. He feels a little bit Jack Watts. And Jack Watts, people know I was a detractor of his, but he was an exquisite field kick and you could not knock his goal kicking. Unbelievable, dead-eye dick. So Jack certainly had some great attributes. Now, if Jeffo's got a few of them, that's fantastic. The problem I've got with Jeffo is he strong enough in a marking contest? That's the big knock I've still got on him. I've watched enough of Casey to make that assessment, but we'll see. And the thing is, Mark Williams is bullish on him. A lot of the coaches have come out and they've said he's had a great preseason and all the players have been rallying behind him and they think that he's got the makeup to become a good player at AFL level and he can make a difference in our team. So you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's always had the slight frame and he continues to try and build that. And for some blokes, it's not easy. Like I'm a twig, mate. I can't put on weight. Like I get it. Like I completely understand how hard it is for those blokes out there to put on weight who just can't put on weight. And Bailey Fritsch is one of them, but he's just lucky because he reads the game better than most players that I've ever seen play at that level and he takes the piss. But for Jeffo, it's a little bit more demanding because he is attracting big, tall, key defenders. And that's the thing. Can he bring the physicality that's needed to be able to stake a claim at senior level and then to become a player at senior level and retain his spot? Who knows? The jury's out. It remains to be seen. We won't really know until he starts playing games of footy. But do I expect him to be in round one? Well, I throw it to you. I'm going to say no, and you're going to say
no.
Okay.
No, not for me. But I saw an evolution of Jeffo on the weekend, which I liked. And I really loved what Troy Chaplin said about him. He said that we know he can kick goals. He can get on the scoreboards. He's so smart, Matt Jefferson, that he finds ways to kick goals that other key forwards don't kick. And that, I thought, rang true because there's so many times I'll see Matt Jefferson kicked 4 in the VFL, which is unbelievable. Like, he's playing against men in that competition, but I'll tune into the highlights and he crumbs a pack or he reads it a little bit better and gets it out the back, which is, on one hand, a massive tick that he can read the play as a big man like that. But I'm yet to see the big pack mark or he sits on a few heads or outbodies a couple and brings the ball to ground and follows up. I'm yet to see that style in those highlight packages. But on the weekend, once again, reads it well. I think he's got good craft. I think the running patterns were there. And do we have to force him into playing like Roo? Like maybe Roo takes out 3, so Jeffo takes the easier mark. Like maybe we don't have to force him to be this big body that crunches blokes, because maybe it's just not a part of his personality, which I've seen. I know we've seen with previous key forwards, and it has been frustrating. But yeah, I don't know. He's got strengths in other ways, and he can kick goals in other ways. But I just saw a version of Jefferson which I thought was awesome. He's still so young. He's like 20 or 21.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if he just keeps chipping away, plays 5 to 10 games this year, plays 10 to 15 next year. He's a real project player. Like, I heard he dominated his school footy, like one of the best players in that league the season he got drafted. I heard he was really, really good down at the NAB League. Now, I didn't see any of it, but apparently he was really influential when he was playing at that level. Maybe he's just one of those guys that it's going to take time until he's 25, 26, and it does click. But, I don't see him having a meaningful impact in 2025. But I saw some things that I thought, I really like it going forward. He's creating good habits, and I don't know. I'm not. It's not quite a line through him just yet. I'm just excited to see how he develops.
I'd be shocked if he doesn't play games. I think he plays games this year. I don't know how many. Like, I've got the number 5 in my head for some reason. Like, are you on the same wavelength? Do you think he'll get a handful of games? Yeah,
I think 5 to 10 gets a little taste of it. But in my head, I think Disco's ahead of him.
Oh, yeah.
And I reckon Aiden Johnson's ahead of him.
God, he looks like an absolute machine. He crunch blokes.
He wants to kill blokes. Yes. Aiden Johnson has a look in his eyes that
he's the epitome of mongrel bastard.
He wants to hurt, and it's terrifying. Yeah, so I've got a couple of people ahead of Jeffo, but I think we do have to expose him this year, and I think he's ready to be exposed. I just don't have high expectations on him. But I think that's natural. I think 2 or 3 years on a list, play a handful of games, slowly develop. I reckon it's a wait till he's 23, 24, 25, which sounds like a cop-out when we want instant gratification on our key forwards, given our key forward stocks. But I just think with Jeffo, we're not going to get that, so why expect that?
True. Good point. All right, I'll roll through these ones. Blake Howes, he's a lock.
Yep.
Stephen May.
Yep.
Jake Lever.
Yep.
Caleb Windsor.
Yep.
Harrison Petty or Tom McDonald? Because I don't know if they play in the second. I don't think you're not going in with May, Lever, Petty, McDonald, are you? Probably not.
True. I didn't even think that was an option because Tommy McDonald was okay yesterday, but Petty took some marks.
Who do you take out of the two of them?
I'd probably take Tom McDonald, but I don't know why. But Petty was good on the weekend, but for some reason in my head, Tommy Mack.
I think this is a very healthy conversation. I think one of them will miss out. If we're dealing on the fact that one of them misses out, I would not be surprised if it's Harrison Petty because Tommy Mack looks so fit, super fit. Like he looks like he's done everything humanly possible to eke out another year of competitive footy. And he was really good last year. I thought he was one of our shining lights. And there's no reason why Tom McDonald can't keep doing what he did last year. So one of them might miss out if we're going to go with the three talls. And this is the conversation, Doss, and it's good. It's healthy.
He looks like a man, Tom McDonald, that is pumped that the backmen have the license to take on the corridor. I think, in early 2012, he had the license that he gave to himself to take on the corridor just with reckless abandonment, Tom McDonald. So on the weekend, knowing that that's an instruction, he just started biting off stuff that I haven't seen for 13 years from the man. And some of his decision-making by foot back in the day was terrifying. But now that he's got the license, it's going to be exciting.
Absolute darts. He kicks them low. Christian Salem.
Is he fit?
I believe he's fit, and I believe he'll be in the reckoning. So if we go off the basis that he's fit, will he be in your 23?
Yeah, well, we're about 4 back pockets down, so he's going to have to play.
I think he's going to have to play as well, but he is an asterisk for me. I don't know if he's 23. So that's just purely off the basis of his body, purely off the basis of him not being that 2021 version. I haven't seen that guy since then.
Jeez, it was a good version.
Oh, it
should have been All-Australian.
Exceptional version. So for me, it's an asterisk. I don't know yet, but I'm kind of with you. I think he'll play just purely because of personnel issues in that department. Yep. Jack Billings, will he play?
Yes, I thought he was good on the weekend. I think.
Sure.
I think Caleb Windsor is going back to give a Jack Billings the full wing. Like instead of trying to play that sort of tough, hard, half forward role, I think it's like, Jack, you're an outside player and we love that about you. You're a superb kick. You are a connector. You're a Charlie Spargo with a couple more attributes. And Jack Billings looked jacked. He looked fit and he cracked in a couple times. So once again, when you're in the Melbourne program for 18 months to 24 months, you turn into a beast when it comes to contested footy. He didn't shirk a couple contests. I don't know whether I'm crazy, but I thought he was handy on the weekend.
I thought he was good too. Now, I know he's a bit of a whipping boy, but I think Melbourne supporters need to accept the fact that this guy's going to play 10 plus games. Like he just probably will. And I think a lot of people's confidence in him from a supporter perspective is purely going to come down to if he wants to just be that outside runner that gets the pill and delivers it out on the wide expanses, and that's just his job. If he absolutely nails that, I feel like the wheel could turn with the supporters.
I agree.
And you're right. If we're asking him to crack in as a high half forward and kick goals and get involved from a scoring perspective by hitting scoreboard, I think you got to lower your expectations. So to set them up and to have that wing and own that wing and just be the outside run and gun player, like absolutely, I think there's a world where he can make that his own. But if we change him positionally and we put him into those forward positions, I think you're just asking for a bit of trouble because I just don't think you're going to get that physicality that all the supporters are asking for. So it's almost about just altering your expectations. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. And I actually do think he'll play round one as well, just purely personnel and also just the fact that you might be right. The club have looked at it and they've gone, well, we need a better ball user behind the ball, like a quarterback, and that's Caleb Windsor, obviously.
Yep.
And then we also want Langdon to go into the engine room. So Sharpie's come in and he's going to shore up that other spot. So we'll just tick off Sharpie on the other wing.
Yep, love Sharpie.
He's great. And then Trent Rivers in the midfield, so we'll tick him. And then Bailey Fritsch, we're going to tick him. I'm ticking them all for you now, mate.
Yeah,
and
please do.
Disco, yep.
Big tick for me, yep.
Absolute lock. And then in the forward line, I think you're looking at Petracca, Van Rooyen and Chandler. Thoughts?
Love.
Yep, great. So we tick, 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 and then we go on to I love it when I read these things out. This feels like the Thursday pod with Marker and Adzi, and I think Nuggets is making a return this year, so watch out for that. But when I say this, it sounds like one word, one beautiful word in the dictionary, but when you go on Oliver Viney,
that'll do.
Fuck, it feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, that will do.
Gone Oliver Viney. So we're expecting Vines will be fine. I mean, he's the toughest bastard ever. He's hurt his rib, but even if he had cracked ribs, he'd play round one. There's nothing stopping him. So they're all ticks, and then we go to the interchange, and this is where it gets interesting. But we've got Langdon, which is a tick. We've got Langford, which is a tick. Lindsay Sparrow, you'd have to think so. And Tommy was good yesterday. Fair play to him. I thought Tommy was really good. And then the sub, I've got Woden.
Yeah, nice.
Defensive cover for those small forwards that we spoke about before of GWS. So we're happy with that team, I reckon.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that side. I'm trying to think through if there's a couple of omissions. Jake Melksham, how's he travelling?
Maybe not fit. Jono, Ado, big Ado.
Aiden Johnson, yeah.
Chance, I reckon he starts a Casey.
Do we start like a Roo and Turner and Johnson forward line, or is that too tall?
The only problem I've got with this team, which comes back to a point I've made too many times before, and this is where I've cooked myself a little bit, I don't like JVR going into the ruck.
No, so that's why if Jono comes in, JVR won't go into the ruck at all. JVR was only in 12% centre bounces on the weekend, which I would think is drastically smaller than what it has been over the last couple of seasons. I think he only went in because we were swapping one ruck out and Aiden Johnson was coming on. If Aiden Johnson plays, I don't think JVR will ruck much at all. So I think that's why I want him in.
If he comes in, or a Tommy Campbell, one or the other, I reckon, then I think it's as simple as this. Wowie goes out as a sub, and then the sub is either a Lindsay or maybe a Sparrow. I'd probably play Tommy Sparrow. I reckon Lindsay, your first game, you got the sub vest. You'll come on at some point, and that's it. Like, that's probably the team for me at the moment. And then we'll see what transpires, of course, against Freo in the West, and fingers crossed no injuries.
Is that 22 better than our round one team of 2024?
Well, I'd have to get it up. So you've done me here.
Well, so off the top of our head, Ben Brown running around. I remember going, geez, I feel like we're a bit past Ben Brown.
I'll have a look. Keep going. So Benny Brown was in there. Benny Brown was in there.
He was in there. Yeah,
first couple of months, didn't he?
He took on Buku Karmas and kicked one from the goal square.
God, he did. You're right. He burned his pace. Well, I think Buku slipped over, but you're right. I'm going to have a look.
I feel like Caleb Windsor's going to be better than he was last year. I feel like Cozzie's going to be better than he was last year. I think I might have been saying this time last year, to be honest.
Here we go. I've got it. So we'll go from the back line. So Jake Lever, Stephen May, Trent Rivers, Judd McVee, Adam Tomlinson and Jake Bowie. It's a much of a muchness. It's pretty much the same.
Tomlinson out.
Yep.
Trent Rivers is out of that back line.
Yep. And then we've put in, Blake, did I say Blake Howes? No, Blake Howes has come in.
Yep.
Better than Tomo, in my opinion. And then you've got, of course, Caleb Windsor going back behind the ball.
Jeez.
So
I like it.
Feels a little bit better to me, just ever so slightly. And,
and I guess Petty's back.
Harrison Petty.
Yeah. Besides, I think Petty's an upgrade on Tomlinson.
Or T-Mac, depending on which way we go. So, all right, we say we're slightly better in that department, we think.
Yep.
Slightly better. And then on the wings, we've got Windsor, Petracca, Langdon. I mean, it's tricky with the fact that Langdon and Windsor are now going into different positions. We might scrap that for the moment. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I don't want to sound disrespectful. I really don't want to sound disrespectful. The forward line. So Van Rooyen, Fritsch, Neil Bullen, Viney named on a high half forward, Josh Schache.
So this is what I'm talking about.
And Bailey Laurie named in the forward pocket as well. And again, no disrespect, he's on the list, and we don't want to shoot down Big Diesel Schache too much, but yeah, far out. Josh Schache and Bailey Laurie. Sorry.
Daniel Turner is going to give us more of a contest than Josh Schache would have. So I feel like that's an improvement. But then you think of like the development of the people in the list, like Caleb Windsor's 20 games in, Kysaiah Pickett has another 20 games under his belt. Trent Rivers, who was named in the half-back line, going to the midfield, like he's developed a lot more. So just like a very vague look, it feels like we're better positioned than what we were this time last year, just even from just a development point of view.
And then the other ones, we've got Gawn, Salem, Oliver as the followers. We've got the Clary unfit version as well. Yep. We've got the Salem that was doing the midfield role early in the season, which didn't really work. And we thought
that was because of Gussie,
of course, and we thought it was going to work. So we're shored up better there. And then of course we've brought in Harvey Langford.
Oh boy,
to come in as well, who looks like he's going to make an instant impact. And then on the bench in that round one game, it was, or opening round, whatever you want to call it, it was Blake Howes, Tom Sparrow, Charlie Spargo, and Cade Chandler. Charlie Spargo, I'm a big fan of his, and I hope he gets through his Achilles and he'll make a return through Casey and hopefully play a couple of months before he puts his hand up for selection. And whether he can get back into the team remains to be seen. He's missed so much footy. But I think the one thing that we haven't really touched on, which is scary for me, Christian Petracca could play 50-50 mid and forward.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's a ridiculous scenario for us to be able to go, all right, Ed Langdon, we're going to put you through the middle. G'day, Harvey Langford. Welcome to the footy club. You're an absolute bull. You slot in perfectly. We've got the poison class of Xavier Lindsay coming in. We've got a Tom Sparrow that I'm sick of talking about, and he's a lovely fella, and had the privilege of interviewing him on the podcast and sat with him at an event last year. But I'm sick of talking about when's he going to explode. Well, he just might become consistent and get his 15 to 16 and hit the scoreboard more, and we're all happy. We're like, well, we're getting exactly what we want from Tommy. But the fact that we could potentially, given midfield rotations, putting players on those two wings in Sharpie and maybe a Billings and just letting him own that wing, it gives us a luxury, Kados. It gives us the luxury to go, all right, Track, we want you to try and emulate what you did against Carlton, where you kicked the 5 goals and you get us over the line. And we want you to do that more often next year. That's ridiculous. If he's fully fit and the rib injury doesn't affect him as much as we hope, then that's a really nice ace up your sleeve.
Well, not only like the game against Carlton, we should have won. You know, there was an out of bounds, it wasn't out of bounds, or it should have been play on advantage or whatever. We should have beaten Carlton that night. And it was only because of Christian Petracca. He was, I don't think I've seen anything like that since maybe Dusty in the 2020 grand final, where he took the game by the scruff of the neck by playing in the forward line. But because it felt like Christian got up to scratch with his fitness before Christmas. And then the knock on the ribs, he hasn't done a lot of contact, but he was still able to run during January and Feb, I believe. But say he's not up to scratch from a physical and contact and contest point of view. Imagine if they just changed the percentage of minutes and they just go, all right, well, you play 50-50. Like instead of 80-20, you're playing 50-50. That starting 22 when Track is in like the forward pocket is actually scary. But it's still good when he's in the midfield because it takes the midfield to another level. But sometimes when you look at it, when it's Track, Clary and Oliver, Track, Clary and Viney in the midfield, the forward line can look a little bit light on. But when that magnet is shifted, it actually takes the forward line to a whole new level. I think just a really vague look and comparing both 22s, I feel like with Harrison Petty potentially in the back line, it shores up the back line a little bit more than a Tomlinson type. And I feel like that forward line with Disco, who seemed to go to another level, and at least, with Disco, you're getting some good contests in the air. Like at the very least, he's competing, and he's not passive at all. He's in everything, which is good. It looks a little bit stronger, so that's a nice. I know that isn't the starting 22 just yet, but it's nice to sort of compare the two seasons.
I like that. It feels like we're 15, 20% better off, I reckon, in terms of what we had going into last season versus this season, particularly with Clary as well, just being fit, particularly with the fact that we can put Rivers in the midfield now, we can put Langdon in the midfield, we can shore up wing positions, we get Sharpie in, Billings can play the other wing, Petty behind the ball better because Disco's come on. Like, just structurally, a lot of it just makes more sense and feels a lot better. So that was a nice little exercise that I didn't expect, Dossie. But before we go out, and we'll end on Track's comments, but Jack Henderson's come in. He chose the Ds over West Coast, so good boy.
Tough decision, that one.
Yeah, real tough. We love that. And Clean, a leader. He's been banging down the door. Skipper down at Werribee. Teammate, of course, of Aiden Johnson. So great that he's got someone that he's known for a fair few years at the footy club with him already, just to integrate him into the footy program, what it's all about, to be a Melbourne Football Club player. But I think it's just a nice little selection. And again, a player off a highlight reel, and having not watched a hell of a lot of him at VFL level, that I think might get a few games this year and might surprise a few people.
Well, yeah, they were talking about him in the video that the D's released about being an Alex Neil-Bullen type in terms of that high half forward role. He played some midfield as well for Werribee, but he pretty much won them the game. That second half for the Werribee Tigers in the grand final, he just put them on his back. And Aiden Johnson was instrumental in that game as well. But I think what I like is we're getting a good competitive character. Like, it feels like he's one that, in 6 months' time, when there's more interviews from him, he's going to be sprouting the ideology from the Melbourne Footy Club, the DNA, the contest and defence. Like, it feels like he can buy into a footy program and he can drive the standards of one. So at the very least, you're getting a really good character in Jack Henderson, which is exciting and important given, our last 18 months as a footy club. Getting players like that in, I think, is key.
Now, we've been crying out for this. All we ever wanted when the Christian Petracca saga was happening at the end of last year was him to just come out with a statement and say the words of this effect, or to this effect rather, I love the footy club. And he's come out and he's said it belatedly, in my opinion. I would have liked to have heard Christian say it back in August when it was all going down, but he's healed with the club and he's not going to apologise for some of the things that he put on the footy club and why he wanted us to be better. And he did say he wants to make this club great again, and we've got to back him in. It feels comforting. It feels really nice. And I'm particularly pleased that he's come out and made those comments. The one thing, though, I'll say, that's a pledge, that's an oath for me. You've come out on national telly with Mitch Cleary and you've said those words. And a few people said to me, they go, oh, look at his body language. He's blinked when he said it. He doesn't believe it.
He did blink.
He doesn't believe it. Well, I tell you what, if he's saying those words, and I reckon we'll hear him say those words again throughout the season when he's doing his media commitments, because he likes to get in front of the camera. Can't turn your back on us. Can't turn your back on us after those comments, especially at the back end of this year. I think what it does, though, it definitely douses the flames. I think the flames and the media and the vultures, I think he's just kept them at bay there, because I think most journos will go, oh, he's made those comments, so it's not worth fishing for a line at the moment to get those clicks that they like to generate out there in the media world. So I think it's comforting from that perspective. I just want to see him enjoying his footy again. I just want to see him smiling. I want to see him taking games by the scruff of the neck. I want to see him kicking big goals and being the incredible footballer that he has been for a long, long time. He's generational. There aren't many better that I've seen. Gorn, Petracca, Oliver. I throw Viney into the mix as well. They're four of the best Melbourne Football Club players I've ever seen. And I just want Christian to have a big smile on his face with his big chompers and just just enjoy the footy club and buy in. And by all reports and making comments like that, I feel like he is and he has. And as long as that pulls through into season 2025, I'm content, I'm happy, and I believe that all the media hoo-ha will probably go away and he can just focus on footy.
We'll never know how much was real and how much wasn't. And I suppose his silence did feed into that a little bit throughout the trade period. But, man, when the Netflix doco comes out in 10 years' time about the D's dynasty and there's an hour and a half on this being a massive turning point for the footy club and he retires a one-club player and he captains the side in the near future, we'll be so thankful for what he did. So I don't know whether he did come in and say, listen, fellas, this is not good enough. Like, our bellies are full after 2021. We're walking around as if we're the Hawthorn side or the Richmond side or the Geelong side of sustained success. Who do we think we are? You're either in or you're out, or you're either in or I'm out, and just ruffled some feathers and drove the standards. Then what a leader and what an inspiration. Like, I wouldn't have the guts to stand up and do that. So if that's what he's done, then, it's so exciting and what a man. But we just don't know the truth because what came out in the media didn't sound like that. It sounded like he, had just sort of cracked the sads, to be honest. That's what we were getting fed. So when he didn't come out and talk, it was hard. You didn't know what to believe. But if he has bought in, if he does love the club, I'm so excited by the acquisition of Ben Crowe, who does a lot of stuff in the interpersonal relationship space and the mental health space and, finding your goals and finding out what makes you tick. And apparently he's come into the D's and given everyone a chop out, which I think's been important. If he does stick around, play some good footy, doesn't leave at the end of the year, buys in and, what he said to Mitch Cleary is true, then I think he will be the next captain for the D's. I think Max has 3 years left after this year, including this year. So I think having Max still on the list and he does the Pendles and gives it to the next person to step up, but also stays in the list to help that transition. I think in 12 months, if things fall the right way, then Christian Petracca could captain the side. A lot of water to go under the bridge. It's going to be, I don't know what's going to happen next at the footy club. The second I think I've wrapped my head around one thing, something else jumps out. But, I just love the thought that maybe what he did was unbelievable and maybe it was the best thing for the footy club and maybe it was great leadership and what we got fed wasn't true.
Time will tell. You summed it up really well there, Dossie. Now, before I go, the debrief in 2025, you're going to hear from me a lot more in the coming weeks. We've run long. I'm losing my train of thought. There's big changes. We've done a bit of a freshen up in back office here at DeeBrief HQ. So we've done a similar thing to...
Whoa. This feels like a big announcement if Akadaka's getting brought in.
That's my ringtone.
Oh, I thought the pump-up music was getting played because the announcement was so significant.
So that's a bit of a joke between me and the boys, but that's my ringtone, a bit of it's my wife. She's FaceTiming, so it'll be the boys. It'll be Harry, so I'll jump on a FaceTime with him very, very shortly. But just really quickly to wrap up. Fucking hell, Akadaka. It's ridiculous. This is the stupidest ringtone. We're going big. So we're doing a similar thing. So just a few sneak peeks here. So a Casey report will be coming out. So we haven't done enough of this. I think we speculate too much. There's too much conjecture on this podcast about what's actually happening down at Casey. I like to jump on the Demonland forum and read a few notes from the people that are actually down there. And I'll watch the odd VFL game, but we're going to get Cam Burt to come in, who's a very passionate Melbourne supporter, and he'll be doing a Casey report every week, 20, 30 minutes, talk about the Melbourne listed players, how they're performing, how they're going. I think I'll be really interested in the likes of like a Charlie Spargo when he gets back into the team and comes through the Magoos. And, of course, if Jeffo's playing there, how he's developing. So I think to have someone who can take us through it is going to be really important. I've got another historical series coming out. It won't be as layered and textured as, say, a no merger, but we're going to go back through and document some of Melbourne's most iconic games. We'll go back into the 80s. We'll dive into the D's vault. We'll go through some 90s games. We'll speak to some of the players that actually played in some of the most iconic wins that this football club has ever seen. And we'll just take a trip down memory lane and we'll get the older gen pumped up, and then we'll educate the younger gen as well with some of these old famous players and some of these wins that have made the football club that they are, particularly post 87, because, of course, didn't make finals for 23 years from 64 to 87, which is wild to think about. And I feel sorry for all those people that had to go through it that are listening. And we just like to put this era in the bin, but 07 to about 13, we just like to expunge that from our history and just act like that never happened. So I don't think we'll be going through many games from that particular time. I'll continue to do the player ratings. Robbo's coming back on as well, so I've still got the cachet to pay the great man to jump on every second week and do Robbo's rundown. There's a new concept as well that we're working on behind the scenes. We're trying to get that up in round one. Dossie, you're involved in that one as well, so we'll see how we go. But we won't lead people on too much with that one. I want to just hit them while it's hot, but we'll see if we can get that one up and running. And then just a really quick mention, all the premium subscribers who support the podcast and pay their hard-earned, and all the community sponsors as well. They've jumped back on board for 2025. So Network, Wealth Hub Australia, and Melbourne Apartment Collection, they've all bought in again and they've re-signed up, which is massive. And I say it all the time, but it just allows me to be able to get more people involved in the channel with the content that we're putting out in 2025. So extremely exciting times ahead here at DeeBrief HQ with all the content that's going to roll out. I don't know how I'm going to do it, in all honesty. My wife's probably going to file for divorce at the end of the season because I'm doing too much on this particular show. That's just a joke. We love each other dearly, which is also a terrible joke because I sound really sappy. But there is a lot going on here, and I just want to continue to potentially, if I do, enrich the lives of Melbourne supporters every single week on the journey that is an AFL season. It's all consuming. It's ridiculous. WhatsApp groups will be going off this year, and hopefully WhatsApp groups will be going off for the right reasons, and Melbourne will be playing some of their best footy this season and bouncing back into finals. So bit of a sneak preview of what's to come, and of course, as we lead in to the start of the season and that round one clash against GWS, I'll fill you in on all the other dates and all the other things that are happening. But Dossie, it's a big year and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, it's going to be a big year. You're doing a great service for the Melbourne Football Club faithful. I love tuning in when I'm not on the episodes. So, yeah, it's an unbelievable product. I can't believe that you're going to take it to another level because it's already at a really awesome level right now. So can't wait to see what happens, and can't wait to see what the club does as well.
I'm kind of like Cozzy, I'm well regarded, bit of credibility, but opposition supporters saying, you know what, I reckon you're a little bit overrated, mate. I don't reckon what you cracked up to be and what your supporters say about you. So the idea is I just want to put everyone in their box and show them that I'm an all-Australian. I can get to that level, you know what I mean? And
then you'll do a Freo potty next year.
And then I'll start a Freo pod and I'll piss off. But yeah, it's exciting. I want to do it. There's so many ideas I've been thinking of for quite some time. So instead of just thinking about them and then being concepts on a paper, I just want to roll them out and see what we can do with it. And hopefully I can balance the time with family, of course, and work life. So we will see. Dos, thank you. We've run long, but there's so much to talk about now because we haven't spoken on the potty for a good three or 4 months. So I feel like it had to run long for the faithful.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for getting me on. Great result on the weekends with our VFL side, getting the chocolates. And, yeah, some inclusions for Freo. Not long now till we're at the MCG against the Giants. It's coming around quick, but I can't wait. And, yeah, thanks for getting me on again.